about advancing social justice and equity, and we can't do that without thanking our sponsors. So let me just give a big shout out to all of our sponsors. We'll start off with SoCal Gas, who is our main sponsor, our lead sponsor, and we're so excited to have them. We also have some amazing sponsors that include Liberty Hill, the Kaiser Permanente, Los Angeles Care or LA Care. We also have Neighborhood Housing Services, Vermont Sloss and Economic Development, the County of Los Angeles, and that is by Hilda Solis, our supervisor, Sweet Life, Forgiving for Living, the Kinsey Collection, and then my partners, the Black Women Leaders of Los Angeles, and also the Los Angeles Business Journal. I encourage you to look and find out who these sponsors are, what programs and services they offer, because they are phenomenal and we could not do without them. So we want to say thank you. Tonight, as I said, we're going to be talking about advancing social justice in the form of wealth inequities. And we're going to be talking about some things that are really impacting BIPOC. And for those who don't know, BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, People of Color. And our guests tonight are going to just blow your mind. Let me just tell you a little bit about why we're talking about wealth inequities. And we think it is critical that we have this. According to the World Bank, there were 200 million people that will sink into poverty because of COVID-19. Did y'all hear me? 200 million people that are going to sink into poverty. And they're talking about because they lost their level playing ground. Well, I want to submit to you that half of them probably didn't have a level playing ground to begin with. And because of COVID-19, it really opened up our eyes to the inequities of what is happening in the world. You know, everyone's talking about the pandemic of COVID-19, but there were several pandemics before this even happened. For instance, the pandemic of violence against Black people, simply because of who we are and the color of our skin. There's also the pandemic of domestic violence and sexual assault. And both of these two were really pushed to the forefront during COVID-19. And then, of course, there's going to be the pandemic of people being unemployed. And if they are unemployed and not able to pay their bills, they will be homeless. So these are some of the conversations that we are going to talk about tonight, as well as throughout this entire series. I'm really excited to bring on this amazing panel. But before we start with our amazing panel, I want to introduce to you our welcoming guest, and that is Supervisor Holly Mitchell. Give me a moment to read her bio for you. So on November 3rd, 2020, Supervisor Holly Mitchell was elected to serve the 2nd District of Los Angeles County. Throughout her career in public service, Supervisor Mitchell has always worked with the understanding that creating a California where all residents can thrive means investing in the communities, small businesses, families, and the children of Los Angeles County. Having authored and passed over 90 laws in California legislature, Supervisor Mitchell brings an extensive public policy record to the Board of Supervisors. Many of her bills have been at the forefront of expanding healthcare access, addressing systematic racism, and championing criminal justice reform. During her tenure in the California State Legislature, Supervisor Mitchell represented the 54th District for 3 years as Assembly member and later served 7 years as a state senator for the 30th District. As a state senator, she also held the distinction of being the first African American to serve as chair for the Senate Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. In this capacity, she led the passage of state budgets, each totaling over $200 billion for the 5th largest economy in the world. Prior to serving as an elected official, prior to serving as an elected official, Supervisor Mitchell was CEO of Crystal Steers. That's where I met her. And so I'm proud of knowing her for quite a long time. California State's largest dedicated nonprofit to children and family development. In this role, she ensured that families across Los Angeles County gained access to child care and poverty prevention resources. Before leading Crystal Stairs, she gained formidable experience in crafting public policy, both as a former Senate District Field Representative and legislative advocate at the Western Center for Law and Property. Supervisor Mitchell's leadership has been recognized by over 100 community and business partners, and she was recently honored as 2020 Visionary by Oprah Winfrey O Magazine, and making California the first state in the nation to ban natural hair discrimination with the Crown Act. As supervisor, Mitchell is proud to serve the 2 million residents of the 2nd District, which includes the neighborhoods she grew up in, Leimert Park, and the following cities. That's Carson, Compton, Culver City, Gardena, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, Linwood, and parts of Los Angeles, and dozens of unincorporated communities. Supervisor Mitchell is a University of California at Riverside Highlander, a Choral Fellow, Foundation Fellow, and mother to Ryan. So please welcome Supervisor Holly Mitchell.
Hey, Candy. Hello, everybody. First of all, I'm embarrassed that you read that long bio, because you've got a supersonic panel that's going to talk about some real amazing opportunities here in LA County, but I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Second, well, I have three things. Secondly, I thank you for giving me a second bite at the apple. I was supposed to be with you a couple weeks ago, and my technology fell short. Let me just say I fell short, because technology is not my friend. So thank you, Candy, for your understanding and allowing me to come back. This time we had a test run, because me and the laptops are not on the first name basis. So thank you for allowing me to come back. Thirdly, I will say thank you for your partnership and the work that you've done for so many years. We first met and partnered together when I was at Crystal Stairs. And so my deep passion and commitment and support of the community-based organizations and nonprofit organizations that are the bread and butter of meeting the needs of so many of our families and underrepresented groups. So thank you, Candy, for keep on keeping on and doing all that you've done on behalf of everybody who calls LA County home. I appreciate the opportunity to participate today, and what an amazing panel you're going to have. To hear from Anthony Bruce, a descendant of Charles and Willa, this amazing couple that we have all read about and heard about, and I've imagined what their life was, what gave them the idea to buy this parcel of land over 100 years ago. Glad that you're going to be joined by Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd, who I had the opportunity to meet at the press conference a couple weeks ago, standing on the Bruce Beach land. Thrilled that you're going to hear from those folks firsthand, not to mention everybody else who's going to be on the panel, who's going to talk about wealth inequality. Because from my perspective, Candy, it couldn't come at a better time as we collectively figure out how we are going to navigate our way through and out of a dual pandemic, a public health pandemic, and for our community, an economic pandemic, one that has devastated so many of our families, disproportionately impacted women, disproportionately impacted those in the service industry. When we think about the devastation to small businesses and the hospitality industry that happened here in our home county of Los Angeles a year ago, it's absolutely overwhelming. So to talk about wealth inequality, I think is really important. I think it's important that you're having this conversation today. I don't know how many people remember where they were 29 years ago today, but April 29th today is the 29th anniversary of the 1992 civil unrest. And Dr. King famously said, and I'm going to read it because I want to get his quote right. Dr. King famously said that a riot is the language of the unheard. And while some people would suggest that the Rodney King verdict, the verdict that came back declaring all 4 of those police officers who we all saw beat Rodney King, not guilty. We know that civil unrest and rebellions are products of decades of being unheard, unseen, and under-resourced. And so as we think about the economic pandemic we're currently experiencing, it's really important and timely to have a conversation about wealth inequality and why so many of us and our family, friends, and neighbors are left behind. You know, when I am thinking about the Bruce Beach example, you know, when we think about property ownership, particularly in the Black community, you know, when I think a couple of generations ago, I have a great aunt, my great aunt Kathleen, who bought really the family house on 39th and Budlong as a school teacher, and bought the house because her two sisters who had two young children were having a hard time finding housing in LA in the 40s and late 40s, early 50s. So she bought this house on the east side, if you will, where she could. I think it's amazing when I look back now as a single woman that she was able to make that happen. When you think about the discriminatory housing policies that have prevented Black people from home ownership, between redlining, the inability to qualify for home loans. And, you know, tragically, when we look at the data now, there are far fewer Black folks who are homeowners today than there were in the 60s, when so many of these discriminatory policies were still on the books. You know, my interest in running for public office and being an agent of government is to acknowledge that government has sometimes engaged in systemic racism that have held people back. The issue that led to the theft of Bruce Beach through eminent domain by the city of Manhattan Beach is a perfect example of where government have used its power in an inappropriate way. And so the Bruce Beach example, I think, is very exciting. I am thrilled to join with Supervisor Janice Hahn to think through ways in which, since the property now is in the ownership and possession of the county, what we can do to return that property to the Bruce family heirs. You know, the core word in reparations is repair. And from my perspective, the whole point of reparations is to repair past wrongs. And I think this is one example that LA County is going to set for this entire country around reparations for people who have been denied for far too long. I'm thrilled to be a part of that experience and really look forward to opportunities where it can be expanded. I know you're going to hear from people on the panel who are going to talk about unique opportunities here in LA County, but I just want you to know that I'm doing all I can at the county level. I've introduced a couple of motions, one to hopefully redirect some of the American Rescue Plan dollars to support actual home ownership in communities of color. We're going to request that I have asked that a top priority of that funding be used to establish a guaranteed income program. You may have read about through the LA Times and the New York Times what former Mayor Michael Tubbs did in Stockton, something called basic income, where I'm looking at really segments of our community who can't afford the rent because the rent is just too damn high, as the activists say, and can't even think about property ownership or even investing in starting their own small business because they just don't earn enough. And so we talk about a guaranteed income for a segment of our community to help them close that wealth gap. Who knows what could come of those families? The Stockton practice experiment, quite frankly, has been evaluated and studied. And we saw that people were able to spend more time at home with their kids. People were able to, in some instances, not have 3 jobs, but 1 or 2, and to have extra resources for tutoring or to send the kids to camp. I read examples of people who were able to get the car fixed that allowed them to get a better paying job that may have been a little further from home or was not on a bus route. And so this concept of a guaranteed income, I think, is something that government can do to talk about meaningfully how we acknowledge income inequality and close the wealth gap for so many of our communities of color. With that, Candy, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend a little time with you. I'm very excited to hear all of the bright ideas and opportunities for us all to partner that your panel will be sharing today. Thanks again for allowing me to share some time.
Supervisor Mitchell, thank you so much. That was amazing, and we appreciate it. We really enjoy hearing from our elected officials that are really invested in the community. And so I thank you for being someone who cares enough, not only about your job, but also about the people that your work will impact. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you just joining us, I am Candy Lewis, Executive Director of Positive Results Center, and we are going to have a great evening for you. I want to just go ahead and bring some amazing people on. Again, I want to remind you that if you have a question, please do not put it in the chat. Put it in the Q&A so that we can make sure that we address that question for you. And again, thank you so very much, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, for your time. So we're going to show a quick video that will discuss about our next guest. I'm excited to bring up, after this video, we will bring up Anthony Bruce and Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd, who are descendants of the Bruce family, and we'll talk about Bruce Beach for those of you who don't know. So stay tuned.
Property known as Bruce's Beach to the descendants of Willa and Charles Bruce cleared another hurdle today. Bruce's Beach was on the coast of Manhattan Beach as the first and only black-owned beach resort in Southern California. Well, in 1929, the predominantly white community used eminent domain to claim the land and turned it into a park. State Senate Bill 796 will now go to the Senate Appropriations Committee before coming to the Senate floor to be voted on by the full Senate. The bill includes an urgency clause, which means the bill would go into effect immediately upon being signed into law by Governor Newsom.
So we want to thank, I believe that was CBS. We found that video on YouTube. And right now, I am so honored to have Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd and Anthony Bruce. And I'm going to step back and allow them to share a little bit about who they are and why they're here. So let's start with you, Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd.
Yes, I am Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd. I'm a clan chief and tribal elder of the Pocasset Wampanoag tribe of the Pokanoket Nation, Watuppa Reservation in Fall River, Massachusetts. I live in Los Angeles, so I'm bi-coastal quite a bit. We are the first contact tribe with the Pilgrims. Surprise to most people that we are not white or light. We are copper-colored people, and we were the ones, my 10th generation great-grandfather, Chief Osiniquin, which was Yellowfeather, Massasoit, was the one who met the Pilgrims at Plymouth and was their friend for 40 years. Also, my cousin, Metacom or Metacomet, and some know him as King Philip, was the first to go to war to kick them out. And that was the bloodiest Indian war in history in America. And we were the recipients of the first Indian reservation in the United States. I've been a resident of Los Angeles for 63 years. I came here from Detroit with my mother in 1956. I grew up in South Los Angeles, went to Crenshaw High School, John Muir Junior High School, and my mother moved a lot, so I went to every school here, including Washington Prep. You name it, I've been there, except for Dorsey. Thank you. And so I know a lot about South Los Angeles and home ownership and, just surviving in the Black community as a person of color with all of the obstacles that they put in your way to survive. I am also an actor. I've been an actor also for 63 years. I started when I was six years old here in Los Angeles. And so I've been also working in the entertainment industry fairly consistently in voiceover, commercial, acting, and whatever the case may be in that industry. I am now the historian and spokesman for the Charles and Willa Bruce family, and as well as the Bruce diaspora as a whole in the United States. We have 4 genealogical lines in the United States, comprised of people who were on one of 5 different plantations in the United States, owned by 4 brothers and 1 father, all from Ireland. We were passed around between these plantations like horses and plows and chickens and litters of puppies, back and forth. And each time we went from one plantation to another, we started another nuclear family. That family was broken up, and then you went to another plantation and another nuclear family was started. So therefore, we have hundreds of families of Bruces all around the United States who are desperately trying to connect with their original family lines. And that's pretty much what I've been helping them do, is find out what line they're from and to connect with their family members as well. We do that through genealogical research and through DNA verification as well. I'm now in the fight to get the Bruce's Beach, justice for Bruce's Beach, and for the justice for the Bruce's family, to get the land returned to our people, and to Anthony Bruce specifically, and his family. It's been a long fight. We started back in June, actually on Juneteenth of last year, when Kavon Ward, with her Justice for Bruce's Speech demonstration there, and I was contacted by my cousin Patricia Bruce to help me get involved, wanted me to get involved with the process. I wasn't going to go to any demonstrations at that time, but I was able to do interviews and talk about the plight and the history of our family. And so now I'm here at this point where we've gone through some legislation. We're probably getting to the point to where it's going to be passed and we'll get the restoration of the land to us, but that's not the end of what we're looking for. We also want restitution for the loss of that revenue, that generational wealth that was taken from our people 96 years ago. And we also want those punitive damages that they were asking for because of the collusion of the Manhattan Beach Police Department and the Manhattan Beach Board of Trustees colluding with the Ku Klux Klan to terrorize our family and railroad them out of Manhattan Beach.
Thank you so much for that, Chief. And there's so much that you just talked about. We're going to delve a little deeper in that in just a moment. I'd like to introduce Anthony Bruce. So, Anthony.
Hi, how are you all doing? Hello, Holly, Supervisor Holly Mitchell and Candy. Good evening. And yes, I'm here. I am the great-great-grandson of Charles and Willa Bruce. And of course, if you haven't heard the story, there was some prejudice acts that were taking place against my family about 97 years ago. And they removed the property that we owned in Manhattan City Beach from our family. And so right now we're embroiled in trying to get that land returned to myself, our family, so that we can kind of have a second chance. This is something that we've been dealing with for over 80 years, and to see how they had, pretty much when they took the land from us, you see, the land sat vacant for about 30 years. They didn't do anything with that land. And it's just like a mockery. It's kind of like a slap in the face to see how they would take that land from a family that was thriving there. And obviously, it was very celebratory kind of situation for the African-American community there. And things were working out, but the white residents, they were working with the KKK, was working in collusion with the Manhattan City Council, as they were, committee, whatever they are. And they removed the land from my family, and we just want justice. So that's why I'm here tonight talking with you.
Well, I am so thankful that both of you are here this evening. And I think it's very interesting that the reason that they pulled the property, they stole the property from you, was because they said that they wanted to build a park. And they didn't do that. It was just vacant for years and years and years. And so you definitely should have that property back and the restitution. And Chief Yellowfeather Shepherd had mentioned Kavon Ward. Would you like to talk a little bit about who she is?
Well, she's the young lady who she's a resident of Manhattan Beach. She's one of the 0.5% African Americans who live in Manhattan Beach. She happened to go by and visit the park on Juneteenth and actually have a small demonstration there in celebration of Juneteenth. While she was there, she had an epiphany that she probably would want to do something about restoring the land to the family. And so therefore she started the chant, Justice for Bruce's Beach, which grew into a demonstration. And she has been working feverishly. She has a new organization you can find on Instagram and Facebook called Justice for Bruce's Beach. And she's been working without any type of compensation, just out of the goodness of her heart to support us in our fight to get justice for our family. She also is a very intelligent young lady. She's working on her doctorate right now. She's a single mother. And out of all of that, she's still out here without any type of support, any type of security, fighting for us. And we applaud her for her efforts.
I definitely applaud her as well. It says something very telling about a person who shows up for someone else without any interest for themselves. It's really important, especially as Black people and people of color, all people of color. And let me just say this, everyone, we should learn how to support and watch out for everyone. But because we don't, it's great when you find someone who has a heart and that passion to make sure that someone else's birthright, livelihood, whatever it is acknowledged, received, and respected. So Anthony, do you feel good about what's happening to your family with return of the property?
Actually, yes. It is bittersweet, though. However, I tell people, of course, we are glad that this is finally taking place and that there is change. It's been quite some time for my family. But, again, I tell people, yes, this was an act of violence and hate that was committed by the Ku Klux Klan. And if the Ku Klux Klan, did they just disappear? Did they vanish? I think they're still there. And I think that is the reason why it's been taking so long to kind of get this processed. Because I believe that there is a lot of racial injustice and hate that is still being, committed there in the Manhattan City Beach, unfortunately. And I can just call it like I see it. My thing is obviously this is a very extremely wealthy, family that we had. And to see how far we've been knocked down because of that racial injustice is just an atrocity to me. And of course, we're definitely happy, but we're still on guard. We want to go back over there and make some changes, but again, how willing is the community going to be to embrace that change? And so that's what we really need to work on. And of course, the return of the land is just the beginning of our fight. This is something that LA County is stepping up with Janice Hahn, Supervisor Hahn. She has done a marvelous job. And of course, with Kavan Ward and Chief Dwayne Shepard, we are definitely moving forward in the right direction. And thank you, Holly, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, for being here tonight, because this shows your support as well. And I thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited. I've worked with Supervisor Janice Hahn as well as Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and these are some phenomenal people. They have really made a commitment to make sure that what's happening, the injustice that has affected you, that has affected every one of us and the community, that there is going to be a satisfactory return. So I hope everything goes well for you all, and we will continue to just watch what's going on and support you in any way we can. So Chief Dwayne, tell us, what's been the process to get the property back in the hands of the rightful owners?
Well, first, it was get out there and raise hell. And the media, can't ignore controversy. And so I created controversy. I called out the Manhattan Beach City Council. I called out the residents of Manhattan Beach, the conservatives who are disguised racists, and publicly put them out on Front Street, as we say, and let the world see just who they are. And with that and put the pressure on them to do something about the injustices that their ancestors committed against our family, the criminal acts that were committed against our family. Once we started gaining that media attention, then other people started stepping in, pledging their support to us. And most importantly, Supervisor Hahn, who was the first to step up and say, well, wait a minute, that land is down there on that beach. And so down there on that beach on county land, and that's the county lifeguard training facility. And I can do something about that. And she had not heard about the issue. And so therefore, once she heard about the issue in the media, she stepped up most kindly and most courageously and said, we're going to try and get that land back for you. And we're not going to take a long time to do it. We're going to get it done as soon as possible. So then Assemblyman Al Marasucci and Senator Stephen Bradford, as well as Supervisor Holly Mitchell, joined in and with others. And they have supported the bill that Senator Bradford has put forth, Bill 796, to go through two committees and on to the Assembly and the Senate for a fast track vote, and hopefully to be signed by Governor Gavin Newsom. And hopefully we'll get this land back before the end of the year. The only insult to everything is that, first of all, the Manhattan Beach City Council had a task force to study the issue of what they said are reported incidents in 1924, 25, 26, and 27 with facts that are ostensible. And we're saying, well, what side of history are you on? And they did their own studies with their own personnel, and admitted that these acts happened and that it was unfair to our people. So they started a task force to do this study, and then they never reached out to us, to the Bruce family, to be a part of the task force at all. In fact, they haven't reached out to us yet. Members of the task force have tried to reach out to us, but there were some disrespectful things going on, and we decided, this is going to end up a mess, and we don't want our name associated with it. So
Right.
now they've disbanded that task force, and they put $350,000 into some artwork. No question about giving anything to the Bruce family in restitution. So we're going to continue to fight. I've always been taught in my family, you don't negotiate with racists, you fight them.
Well said.
Wow. Well, I'm very humbled that you came on, because I don't think enough people know. And the more people know, the sooner you can get your property back. When you are in a battle, you need your family, you need your tribe together. And so I, again, give much respect to all of the elected officials and everyone else, and also to Ms. Ward for making sure that this is on the forefront for all of the news media that has been covering this. So let me ask you, Anthony, Mr. Bruce, is this going to change your life if you get the property back? Because we know that the property, they say, I've been doing a little research, and for the last few years, they've been talking about is valued at about $750 million. And I think that's kind of low. So how is this going to impact your family and you personally?
Yes, I think it is valued actually at 75 million. And my thing is, like, the change for me would take place almost instantaneously. But I think this is more of a spiritual change too. Kind of like an awakening here for the community. My thing is, like, the sooner we embrace and accept that things can be better, then that's when I think that people will start to realize, okay, we can actually move to Manhattan City Beach and flourish. For me personally, I've considered moving out there, hopefully trying to start over. Of course, we're the Bruce family, so we're entrepreneurs. But my thing is, like, we do want to go over there with the right kind of intentions in mind. I think sometimes when people go over there and they just say, oh, this is about the money and this is about the land. No, this is a humongous responsibility for me. And I'm going to be very accountable to those people that I'm working with. And I believe that this is something for the entire community. Personally, this is going to be one of those kind of things where I can lay my head down at night and know that, yes, I'm wealthy, but again, this is something that is an inheritance. It's my birthright. Yes, of course. This would have been handled within the family. It would have been passed from generation to generation, the wealth there. And, my thing is, like, we want to see that for my next generation, so tons of Bruces should be able to experience the change. But me in particular, I think it's going to be a massive overhaul of my life. And I think it's going to be important to remember that for me, I know that it's a big responsibility, and I plan on, hopefully making Charles and Willa proud and living up to their expectations, because this is my great great grandmother that we're talking about. She had a dream to actually move out there and to really have this community and a thriving business. And of course, that is one of the things that we're kind of going for, because they condemned the business and stole the property. We have to seek that restitution. We have to seek that reparations. And my thing is, like, it's one of these situations where we just have to continue to go forward. And so that's the biggest change, is learning how to deal with this new immense responsibility.
Wow. Well, let me say, I'm sure that your grandparents, your great grandparents, and everyone that was involved in the original creation of the Bruce Beach Resort, because it was a beachfront resort and it was very prosperous and thriving. I know that they're already proud of you. So to get your property back, to rebuild your business, I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to witness it and support. Before we move further, there are a few questions in the Q&A, and we will get to them. So if anyone else has any questions, please be sure to put your questions in the Q&A. And Chief Dwayne, how do you protect your wealth and land from predators? Because we know that your property was stolen. It was taken by eminent domain. The business went completely away. And so looking at it today, how would you suggest that people protect their wealth and land from predators?
Well, first of all, we all know we're going to die. People ignore that fact or don't want to admit that fact, but we're all going to die one day. And if you own property, get life insurance, okay? Because when you die, your descendants are going to have to first come up with the money to bury you. They're also going to have to take care of your belongings and your home and your taxes and your bills and your utilities and anything else that you've left behind that's been untaken care of. And that costs a lot of money these days. And this is how a lot of people lose their generational wealth. They lose it in probate because that individual or those individuals, if they're married, did not put their home in a trust. A trust is a very easy process. It can be expensive for us, $1,800 or $2,000 to have some paper put together to put your home in a trust, where when you pass away, the house will immediately just go straight to your trustees, no court, no change in the property tax rate. It's straight across to the board to your family, tax-free, and to do with whatever they wish, which they can use it to invest or whatever the case may be. What happens is people don't put their property in a trust. It ends up in probate court. The probate court ends up eating up all the equity in your home, and your family walks away with nothing but bills for burying you. It also you can get a trust done on, and I don't know if I should be advertising, but LegalZoom does a very good job for a couple $100. And so there are ways of getting that trust done without having to pay $1,800 or whatever the case may be. You also, especially in our cases, we just come across a very disturbing thing. Some blacks, and this is we're talking about unity. Now, I and Anthony have been in this fight along with Kavan for a year. We have not taken any money from anyone. Anybody offer us money, we always tell them to give it to a charity or give it to other organizations that Color of Change and NAACP, any of these organizations that are helping us with our fight. We have a couple of Black individuals who have trademarked the name Bruce's Beach to sell T-shirts and novelties. His name is Joshua Housley. He lives in Hermosa Beach. Also bought up the domain names to Bruce's Beach, for personal gain. Now he's making personal gain off our pain and trauma when that's not what we've been here for. We're here to help all people, because what we do is going to affect Black people all around the country and maybe the world when we get this land back. And we have this one morally depraved individual who thinks only of himself and putting money in his pocket. So you have to protect yourself all around, and you got to think out the box. We probably should have gone and got got that name trademark, but that's not what we were here for. We know nobody white would have dared touch it. Not with me in the media, they would not, and rightfully so. But this, our own, like they say, all skin ain't kin, went out there and he decided he gonna make a buck off the pain and trauma of our family and steal our family legacy for his own personal gain. So you have to look out, you have to think out of the box in all these cases. But that trust, that life insurance, to make sure that your affairs are taken care of and not a burden on your family, and making sure that your home and your car and your stocks and bonds and credit cards and all that other kind of stuff that you have are in that trust with a pour over will, so that everybody knows how you want it to be distributed and used in that trust, is the best way for a small person in the Black community to preserve their wealth and hand it down to their community without any type of tax burden.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you spoke about that, because I know way too many people who have lost their entire livelihood, their family, their relationships, because they didn't put property in a trust. It went to probate court. People were arguing and fussing over $10,000 or $50,000, and they wound up walking away with $1,400.
Yeah,
like,
that's
what?
right.
You lost your house, you lost your relationship with your brother, your sister, your auntie, your cousin, your mama, your daddy, or whoever, and you walked away and you did all that for like $1,400?
Absolutely. And also this other thing that people are doing now, our elders are doing, the reverse mortgage.
Yes.
Bad idea. I mean,
Bad
if
idea.
you need help, if you need help, go to your family. But if you get a reverse mortgage, take all the equity out of your home. Okay, your home was only worth $400,000, $450,000, and you have a reverse mortgage for $383,000 that you pulled out to live off of. Guess what's left for your family? $100,000. And by the time they finish dealing with that in court, paying off all the other fees that have to be paid, they're not going to have hardly anything left. So that's a terrible thing. You need to, if you're elderly and you're going through issues, sit down, talk with your family, tell them what's going on, and tell them you would like to leave them the house, but you're going to have to find some other way to preserve it besides getting a reverse mortgage. That house goes right back to the mortgage company as soon as you die, unless your family can come up with that $383,000 to pay it off.
It's so scary to think about how many people are losing their homes, how many people have lost their homes behind, I'm gonna say, malpractice, because that's really what it is. That's really what it is. When we went through the housing fiasco, I think it was in 2007, 2008, and now with COVID, people don't understand, especially Black, Indigenous, people of color. The way we gain wealth is usually through our real estate, and also through our creating entrepreneurships and businesses. And so if we are, first off, the one thing in the world that you never get any more of is land. When you get land, you should never sell your real estate. You need to keep your real estate, and then to mortgage it to the top level, so you don't have any wiggle room, because anything could possibly happen. So I'm glad you spoke about that, and then especially about making sure that you have a reputable insurance agent. Make sure that they are licensed, that they're bonded, that there's somebody. They're not just like your friends, homie hookup, trying to get, you can save $2 here and $4 there, because you wind up losing everything.
Absolutely. And you need to do it early in life. Don't wait till your 50s and 60s, because the premiums keep going up and up and up. Do it in your 20s and 30s, while the premiums are very low, and you lock them in with a whole life policy or something of that nature. They scare you. They tell you, oh, you're going to die within 10, 15 years. Get this term life insurance. You pay for term life insurance. It's just money out the door, because once that term is up, that insurance is gone, and so is your money. So you got to find other ways of preserving your wealth. And let me tell you, right here in Los Angeles, right here in South Central Los Angeles, where I live, there are houses all around the community here that are boarded up, and the grass is growing all around it. That indicates one thing to me: in a very progressive real estate market, where you can get maybe almost $40, $50, $60, $70,000 more, $100,000 more for a home in this community. They're sitting there with the grass growing around there. That means that house is in probate. That means that's somebody died of COVID and they had to board the house up, and that house is sitting in probate waiting for the government to just take it away, or the reverse mortgage people or somebody like that. And that's all over this community right now. Houses, and they don't have for sale signs. Now, you know, if the white man could buy it, he'd have been in here to buy it like he did in 2007 and 2008. That's how gentrification got started here, because people had lost their homes because they weren't paying their taxes and things of that nature, and then had overburdened themselves with these subprime loans. So, you know, all money is not good money, folks. You got to sit, you know, we have to stop being trifling. I just say it, you know, we're lazy, you know, we're sitting around smoking weed, not getting nothing done, you know, hanging out the liquor store. And, you know, some of us can't even read or write. We can't read a contract or anything of that nature. And we need to step up and start taking care of business.
And that's one of the things that I think it's important that we start teaching financial literacy at an early age. We don't even teach it in schools. So that's something critical. So our time is draining down to our last few minutes. But I want to get to these questions because our audience has asked a couple of questions. In particular, Janet Kelly asks, how can the audience stay engaged and continue to support the rightful return of Bruce Beach to the family?
Well, first of all, they can contact their state senators and their assembly people and let them know that State Bill 796 is coming, and to support that bill, and that you support the people of the family of Bruce Beach getting their land back. Also, you can go to the Instagram page of Justice for Bruce's Beach. They also have a Facebook page. Also, Color of Change is supporting us as well. And just make your voices heard. You know, people are out here talking about, you know, Beyonce on TMZ and, you know, on the news shows talking about the last car chase and whatever. You know, we need to change our narrative to what's important. And what's important is that our people stand up and fight and set the example for your children. They're going to have to fight. Do you think you're going to leave here and leave this country the way it is right now? I could die tomorrow. We've trained our children to fight. We got a 100-year plan. If we don't get the land back now, the next generation is going to come back and keep at it. And the next generation after that, and the next generation after that. You got a plan for life. But I don't intend to leave my children here with this fight any longer. This is done for us. They draw a line in the sand. I've dug a trench in the concrete, and we're not going to move until we get justice. But that's the way to do it. Reach out to the people who are supporting us and support them.
Yes.
Awesome. Anthony, I have a question for you in particular from Janet Kelly. Janet asks, she says, Anthony mentioned that returning the land is the first step to healing. What's the next step or expectations that will move the family to restoration?
The next step after that, the return of the land, I think it would be actually moving forward to see how well the community embraces this change. I am concerned about that. I believe, like I was saying, that maybe the KKK is still there in Manhattan City Beach. I've heard of racist attacks. You know, the diversity of the community is, you know, it's unacceptable, you know, and so I would like to see more diversity in this area. And of course, we're going to focus our attention on Manhattan City Beach Council and for the hate crimes that they committed against our family as well. This is going to be something that we're going to have to focus on moving forward because, you know, Supervisor Janice Hahn has stepped up with Steve Bradford, and of course, Supervisor Holly Mitchell. We're all in this together, and we're trying to see this get done, the process of the return of the land. But the next steps would be we have to see how the community reacts to this kind of a change. It won't be particularly for the Bruces because we've already experienced what it's like to live there in Manhattan City Beach. So we want to see if they're willing to start making changes on their end.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. We have a couple more questions. So I want to lift up that Yolanda Woodard had asked, what can we do now to support the Bruce family? And I know that was touched on, but one of the things that you mentioned, that there is this scandalous person who is going around taking money from your property, from the name of your property. And you mentioned that you all don't accept donations, or you don't take cash or anything. But you said that there's some other organizations that they might be able to go to. So
Yes.
can you mention who those other organizations are?
Color of Change, Justice for Bruce's Beach on Instagram and Facebook. I forgot the other one. Mostly Color of Change. If you go to Justice for Bruce's Beach, that's the main one. You go to them, and then they can tell you the other organizations that are supporting us. And like I said, I've been so busy in the fight. I get interviews 5, 6, 7 times a day, and it's just hard for me to keep up with that. And I'm so grateful for Kavan and the young ladies, that Kaitisha and the other ladies that are helping her to stay on top of this, because without them, we just would not be able to handle all of the overwhelming requests that we have. But Justice for Bruce's Beach on Instagram and Facebook would be the first place I would start. And I believe there's justiceforbrucesbeach.com or .org. But just go Instagram and Facebook. That'll be the easiest way to log into them and go from there.
Thank you so much. And then the last question is, again, from Janet Kelly. What can and let me just say, Janet Kelly is phenomenal. She is one of our Black women leaders of Los Angeles, one of my mentors. And so she asked, what can the audience learn from this wealth theft and the potential economic renewal opportunity? And I will ask both of you all to answer that, and then we'll say thank you.
Well, what you can learn from this wealth theft is that these people out here are vicious. They don't like you. They're mentally ill. Anybody who's a racist is not mentally stable. Anybody who thinks he's better than another human being is mentally unstable. They're dangerous. And so anytime they see you have anything more than them, or not even more than them, just have something for yourself, they begin to become very evil in their sinister, very evil in their thoughts, and they begin to take on sinister ideas. And I think it's probably something that's held over in their genes from when they first got here, murdering my people, from all the 100 million indigenous people in this country. So what you need to do is know your enemy is better than you know yourself. And know that you sooner or later they're going to attack you. They're going to come at you some way. They're going to want to raise your property taxes so that you lose your house. You know, they're going to try and foreclose on your property because you missed a couple of payments and it didn't come in the mail. I mean, you know, there are many ways. So you got to know your enemy and then have a strategy to make sure that you have a response to any attack by these people. A meaningful response, not just praying for them.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And Anthony, what about you?
For me, with the wealth theft situation, I look at that as you have a situation where somebody is trying to steal your wealth from you. Again, this is a scenario where you have to really be mindful of what you have and be accountable for your own wealth. Sometimes, you know, you can look at somebody else's wealth and you might think, okay, this is a nice neighborhood, or it's one of those things where it might be positive to be around. But again, everybody has their own wealth. You get paid from your job and you get your paycheck. It depends on how well you deal with that money. And of course, for the Bruces, we're entrepreneurs. And so we had to deal with that for the potential economic renewal. Of course, you don't want to waste the opportunity. If you can grow your wealth, then I think that would be a positive thing. But I would suggest for everyone that's listening to my voice that you be mindful of your own actions and how you spend your money. This is something where it doesn't even matter what you spend it on. Again, you are ultimately accountable for how you use your wealth.
This is so true. I am so, again, honored to have you both here to share with us, the audience, the community. We are also streaming this live on Facebook so that people can learn about what's going on, how it has impacted you, what they can do, and how we can support. So we're going to be here just following and supporting. And if anyone needs to reach out or wants to support in any way, if you didn't get that information that they mentioned earlier, you can contact us at info@prc123.org, and we'll make sure that we keep this connection going. I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to keep you all in my thoughts and in my prayers. And I'm really excited. I know that this time around that you're going to get this property, because I know who Supervisor Janice Hahn is. I know her work. I know Senator Bradford and Holly Mitchell and their commitment to making change. So I wish you well. I thank you very much. And we bid you adieu. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are really, I really hope you got a lot from that. We're going to, that was a great setup for the rest of our conversation, because they talked about being entrepreneurs. They talked about losing homes. They talked about even wealth, generational wealth. And our next panel is going to really get into that as well. But I want to take a moment and say that I am super sorry that we're not going to be able to bring up Lavina Lewis, who is the owner and CEO of Vina Vina Handcrafts. She's having some technical difficulties and we're unable to get her in. And I was so excited to bring Lavina in to talk about her handbags. And so we're gonna, Lavina, I know you're somewhere listening, watching, hopefully. Know that we're going to bring you back. We're going to highlight you. We're going to highlight your handbags. We're going to promote you on Facebook so people will know about the phenomenal work you do. And I don't believe in telling other people's truth. So we're going to bring you back so that we can share the work that you do. Right now, we're going to bring up our next panel. But before that, we have a poll for you. So let's see if we can't get that poll question up while we bring on our next panel. Either one. So either one of our panel, we have a few polls and they're coming up. In the meantime, can we say thank you to our ASL team? They are phenomenal. They do great work. And I'm just excited to really always have them here. So let's see. This panel said, or excuse me, poll says, are you aware of the resources available to help start a small business? Okay. So please take a moment to answer this poll. It's a real-time question while we bring up our next panel. And so while this is coming up, we're going to be bringing on Joseph Bruzan. He's the CEO of Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation. We're going to also bring in Lori Gay. She is the CEO of Neighborhood Housing Services. And my friend, my sister, a member of the Black Women Leaders of Los Angeles, Lorna Little, and she's the CEO of St. Anne's Family Services. And while I just said that, let me just also say she's also the first Black female CEO for St. Anne. So I'm excited to have this panel. They are going to blow your mind talking about the different programs and resources and how the economic impact of COVID-19 has hit us, what resources are available. So are you all finished? Let's see. Yes, we have finished that panel, or excuse me, that poll. So again, I want to thank Chief Dwayne Yellowfeather Shepherd and Anthony Bruce, the Bruce family, and we hope that they get their property back in Manhattan Beach. So let's go ahead and bring our next panel up. Again, we're sorry that Lavina Lewis won't be able to join us. So let me tell y'all, I love these people. When I tell you these, our panelists are some amazing men and women who do transformative work in the community. They have changed the game in Los Angeles County. So let us start off with introducing Lori Gay. And Lori, why don't you go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm going to say the world's briefest bio is what I should have, but the NHS has 36 years of serving families throughout the region. And we've touched millions of families with financial counseling and education, training, and nurturing. And so we're grateful for that and happy to be a part of this panel tonight, Candy. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to bring on Lorna Little. Lorna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Candy. Thank you to all of the people watching, and thank you for having me. I am Lorna Little. I am the president and CEO of St. Anne's, and I am the leader of an amazing organization providing housing, transitional housing, supportive housing, permanent supportive housing for young people and adults, many of them who have come to us through the foster care system. We have wraparound services, we have mental health supports and services, and workforce development. So all the different pieces with our early childhood education center services to try to help, decrease that gap in wealth.
Thank you.
Being supportive
Thank
as
you.
a sister and proud member of our Black Women Leaders of Los Angeles.
Yes, thank you so much. And Joseph Joe Ruzan. Joe, introduce yourself.
Well, good evening, all the guests on this call this evening, and thank you, Candy, for putting this assembly. This is wonderful. I'm still kind of in awe and in shock to a certain degree with the Bruce story. We see it on the news, but to hear it right out of the mouths of the family members is heart-wrenching, but motivational for us as well. Anyway, my name is Joe Ruzan. I'm the president and CEO of Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation. I stand in the footsteps of the founder, Miss Marva Smith Battle Bay, who some of you on this call may know. She was really the queen bee of South LA for economic development, her and others like Juanita Tate. And so I'm very privileged. I'm in my 5th year at the helm of the organization. I spent 29 years with the city of Los Angeles. I won't go back any further to go through my career because you all will think I just could never keep a job. Thank you for having me.
Joe, I know I've seen you at a couple of those jobs, but you always did a great job. And thank you so much for uplifting the truth that we just heard from the Bruces. What I think is important that we also mention is this is a huge story, especially where this property is located in Manhattan Beach. But I also want to lift up that this truth is the truth for so many other people of color who have lost their homes through eminent domain or because they didn't have the money or the resources or whatever the case. They lost it through eminent domain or foreclosure or some other scandalous practices. So we hope that there's resources available, and I know that there are, and Lori is going to talk about them. I think, Joe, you might even talk about a few. But what I want to do is I want to start with Lorna. Lorna, can you tell us what do you feel are the drivers of wealth inequity and the gaps for the population of women, children, and families you work with at St. Anne's Family Services?
Thank you, Candy. There are so many, and especially with this year, with what is going on with the pandemic, people already are challenged with economic issues and with the losses kind of focused, especially among women, minorities, and workers who had jobs that weren't high paying to begin with. And so when you think about the systemic factors that we've mentioned, we talked about, racism, inadequate access to education, unaffordable housing. Everybody talks about affordable housing, but if you're in Los Angeles, you already know unaffordable housing. Our families are facing pay inequities, the impact on our families who come to our variety of programs for the various things I mentioned earlier, looking for wraparound services, looking for mental health supports. And, in our programs, we recognize that once you start from behind, it's really hard to catch up. And that's what I think people need to understand, that when you talk about the wealth inequity, it is very difficult when I gave a talk one time that I said some people are born with a silver spoon, some people are born with a plastic spoon, and some people are born with no spoon at all. Okay.
Yes.
And when you come into a program, because of the various issues with poverty, because of what they faced in their homes with, inadequate housing, being homeless, couch surfing that we talked about, some of the drivers are the educational attainment. If you haven't had the opportunity to access proper education, or you've missed school because of what was going on in your family, the lack of job training, and proper job training that allows people to create and have opportunities to learn what they're good at and share in a way that they can feel successful. We tend to pull people and direct young people to the same types of jobs. We need to give them opportunities to explore all creative endeavors, as well as, job training that can give them an opportunity for gainful employment. A lot of the drivers around just basics. If you're hungry and you can't, get the food you and your family needs to eat and be able to go to work and go to school, people don't realize how hunger and lack of proper nutrition impacts us. It impacts people's health. The inadequate access to healthcare. That was a big political, issue for the past many years. And, people are fighting against people having an opportunity to access appropriate health care. That's one of the drivers. Another thing, you want to talk about the wage gap and inequity, childcare. I don't think people realize how expensive early childhood education is. And we talk about college all the time. Oh my goodness, I need to save up. How can we pay for college? How can we do that? I don't know if people realize a year of childcare in a center without any funding, without any without any type of support will cost you as much as a local college.
Yeah.
So just imagine if you have 2 children. That puts a significant dent into what young people and families need. The justice system, that's another place that we find challenges. A lot of times when you have young people who have had interface with the juvenile justice system or with the justice system, that impacts their ability to make money if now they have certain types of records. When they go, and there's been a lot of ban the box movement and a lot of those things, but working with young people and adults who have faced aspects of the criminal system that have impacted
in the green room.
their income. The other piece is a lot of people are also not aware of just even gun violence in the community, things that happen where young people are losing their lives more with that type of scenario than health issues. And the impact of that creates a lot of trauma, but it also, has parents who have lost their children. It's hard for them to work after experiencing those things. So, one of the things at St. Anne's, we're getting young people that are coming to us with all of these issues. They have the supports for our organization with our workforce development program and all the different things we do to try to get them to, I said, when you start from behind, it's hard to move up.
Right.
But we try to remove those barriers. And those are the areas that, you talk about the systems issue, but all of these things that I discussed are all one of the reasons that it makes it hard for people to close that gap. It makes it very difficult. And so we have to deal with the social services element and the social justice issues to make sure that those are dealt with in order for the young people, the families, the parents, the children to get what they need. Childcare is a big issue. Housing is a big issue. You have adults working full time that are unable to purchase a home here because it's so incredibly expensive. So when I hear about the Bruces fighting to take back their property, to take back their land, you're talking $75 million and then all the other things that they need to get, go for it. I hope they get all they deserve because they had the forethought to be able to look at how they can go about closing that gap and coming up with a way to make money as a family and have generational wealth, which, you know, we need to talk about that in a little while, because we want to, you know, as the kids say, they want mailbox sleep money. We'll talk about that later, because that's what I respect about the young people, really looking at how it's been done to strategize to move forward with that.
Thank you so much, Lorna. I want to talk about a couple of things that you mentioned. For those people who don't know, you said couch surfing. And so there are not only children, but there are teens, there are young adults, and there are adults that will couch surf. And that means that they go from house to house, from friend to apartment, to sleeping in their car, different places. Instead of actually just being on the street, they're trying to find somewhere safe and warm. And so wherever someone will let them in, that hopefully is a friend, they will go, and that's called couch surfing.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. What you really were talking about was trauma. And we don't say that enough. And people sometimes say, no, I'm not dealing with trauma. First off, people bully, and people get bullied because of food and hunger and insecurity.
Yeah.
Bullying is the main reason why kids, especially little kids, bully. And then when we're talking about daycare, a friend of mine told me, oh yeah, I'm gonna get my child into daycare, and they said that it was $250 a week for a kid. I was like, what?
And
First
some
off,
people are paying $500 a week.
So if you think about your person who may work minimum wage, and they're trying to figure out how to pay for their rent, which is already crazy. And now we're talking about one kid, and that's $250 a week or $500 a week. That's ridiculous. We've got to do something to provide a living wage, and then also provide resources and tools for the community. So thank you, Lorna. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. Let's jump on over to Joe. Joe, what's the greatest challenge to communities of color, particularly African Americans?
I think it's been said multiple times. It's the lack of wealth, lack of access to capital. You know, I think it's basically a failure to recognize humanity of Black people in particular. You know, one of the things that I'm unapologetic about, you know, as a 29-year city bureaucrat, we have to be very politically correct. We talk about communities of color. When you look at that barrel of communities of color, at the bottom of that barrel is Black folks.
Always.
Black folks are in the bottom of the barrel of communities of color. So, you know, predatory lending, basically discriminatory practices in lending, and to me, economics is just as important as some of the other things that's been said. You know, creating your own wealth, to me, is the prize that we should be looking at. And that's why, you know, Vermont Slauson right now, we're building a multi-million-dollar technology center in the heart of South LA. Yeah. So we can arm these young people with all the things that kids that don't look like them are getting in Silicon Valley, Silicon Beach. Obviously, you know that it's not in our schools. We also know that, you know, when we look at procurement opportunities for our businesses, the stack is set up against them. So there's just, and at the end of the day, I think there's two things that we look at Vermont Slauson as being the gaps that need to be filled. One I mentioned is tech, and the other one is the access to capital. And that's why Vermont Slauson sought and received its CDFI certification a few years ago. But if you don't know what a CDFI is, I'll drop something in the chat where you can look at it, but it's extremely important because you basically become a community bank. You're able to lend money to businesses in your own community.
That's critical. That's a need. That's a huge need, because we already know that there are banks in our community that don't lend to us. Go ahead, Joe.
You know, I could go on and on, but I'll just hit on some high points. You know, when you look at PPP taught us a lot. COVID has taught us a lot. It was horrific what has happened. You know, over 500,000 people have lost their lives, but also there's some takeaways from this. The PPP has taught us something from the economic development side. Just to share a little information with the audience here, Candy, is in that first phase of PPP, we had 88 businesses, clients of Vermont Slauson that applied for PPP, and 4 got funded.
Wait,
You heard
what?
what I said?
Did you say 4?
4. Let me make sure you understand. 4. And so, and obviously some of you may remember the restaurant chain Ruth Chris, the Lakers, Shake Shack, and others. These multi-million-dollar companies were recipients of some of that funding. Now, some of them gave it back, but the mere fact that they saw fit to even apply for it on the heels of the fact that some of these small businesses were already pre-COVID on the cusp of failure.
Right.
It's estimated that 40% of Black-owned businesses will not survive within the 2 years post-COVID. 40% of Black-owned businesses in LA County. But going back to the PPP real quickly. So why did that happen? Yeah, I see 3 reasons why the first round was so disastrous, particularly for small business and Black-owned businesses. One is loans were being creamed. And for those that don't know that term, you put your application in. If your boy or your girl is the one that's setting up who's going to get that loan, my loan comes in, it gets creamed, just like a cup of coffee, goes to the top. So loans are being creamed, and the banks play that game. And my sister Lori Gay knows how that game is worked. She's dealt with it too. The second part is the banks weren't prepared. The banks didn't add additional staff to take on all these additional loans.
Right.
They basically used the existing staff. And last but not least, which is somewhat convicting for us at Vermont Slauson, our clients weren't ready.
Yeah.
Bank statements, prior year taxes.
Yeah.
We're dealing with some businesses that don't operate on the basic fundamentals. So what we had to do, we partnered with 2 other CDFI organizations. One was PCR, my friend Mark Robertson, and the USC Credit Union, which also got their CDFI, my friend Gary Perez. And so we partnered, and the deal that we struck was this, Candy. All right, we can't all make the money off these loans. Now, we wanted to. That's 5% on every loan. That's funded, right? But at Vermont Slauson, we said it's more important for us to work as a team. PCR, USC Credit Union, and Vermont Slauson. So Vermont Slauson did the majority of the TA, the technical assistance and business coaching. So we started working with the clients to how to properly fill out the application, making sure the bank statements were tight, making sure your taxes are in order. And the second round, we were able to fund 44 businesses at $2.4 million.
Wow.
So the message here is that sometimes you got to take a step away and take one for the team.
Yeah.
We're done. And we took one for the team.
Yes.
And, we'll get our blessings another way. But at the end of the day, we know that 44 businesses were able to get funded that, quite frankly, probably would not have in many cases. So those are the kind of things that we got to learn and work from with PPP, is that we got to better equip our businesses. When a business comes to Vermont Slauson, or a person, I should say, a client, and they want to start their business, when we do our BNA, our business needs assessment, we have a box. And on that box, it says, are you employed? And if it says I'm unemployed, you can't start a business. You need a job. Okay. So we're going to refer you to the South LA WorkSource Center with my sister, Laura McNeil, right? So the other thing is, we have another box. Tell us how you operate your family budget. If they leave it blank, that's telling you something. And we're telling, if you don't know how to, if your house is not in order, you can't start a business. So we will refer them to our elementary Quicken program, where we teach them the basic elements of how to start a budget. So again, we don't want to set people up for failure. We want to give them the tools early on so they can be successful.
Absolutely. That is so true. One of the things that I made sure when I put together this nonprofit, because I actually took it over, it wasn't doing anything. It never lost its nonprofit status, but I made sure that our finances our finances, that is critical for a business, and a business of any size. It doesn't matter if there's one person or 50 people or 150 people. Your numbers need to be right, because you're right. When that first round came, I had so many people say, "Oh, like, I don't even know how to fill out this form." And I said, "Would you have a relationship with a bank?" And they're like, "No." I said, "Well, that's the first thing you should always have, a relationship with a financial institution. Don't just be putting your money somewhere and they don't even know you." But something you said I really want to talk about. That, did you know that the richest people in the 10-month period during COVID that lost their money gained that money back? But your average person, what they lost, it's going to take them 10 years just to get back to this playing field. And we already know this playing field isn't level. So if you have, we're talking about the haves and the have-nots. This is the real have and have-nots, and never will have in some cases, and then some are always will have. We have to learn how to, from the very beginning, teach our kids, teach our family about money and the importance of money, managing that money, and taking care of your money. Next, we're going to bring in my sister, Lori Gay. Lori, what is NHS doing to help the recovery that impacts BIPOC communities, and how is your work different?
Thank you, Candy. I'm just enjoying listening to my panelists. And we all keep giving each other shout outs, right? Because we know how difficult the work of recovery is.
Yes.
And that our communities just keep suffering. And it seems like we're not getting ahead in some spaces. But I'd like to champion that. 3 years ago, our business was down to 21% Black families participating when it was normally 45%. And post foreclosures from the last economic crisis, families just weren't making their way back. And we heard a lot of things from Buppies saying, "I don't want to live in Madeira's neighborhood, I want to live in Santa Monica," to seniors saying, "I lost my home the last time and I want to just stay a renter," to, people saying home ownership's out of reach for me. And we're known as the region's largest affordable home ownership provider. So we got in the groove 3 years ago and really reached out and spent time on KJLH and other spaces saying, "What, get in here. What are you thinking about? Build your portfolio, not just your resume, your bling, some stupid car. Nobody cares. What you need to care about is legacy and wealth building. And if you don't want to live in Madeira's house in Crenshaw, which I don't understand, but say you don't, own it and then rent it out to paying tenants who help you build a balance sheet that you can leave for future generations."
Yeah.
They do better on the East Coast and in the South than we do on the West Coast. I don't know what's going on. But today's business is we're 46% Black in terms of our client response, and I'm grateful. Age 45 and below is our biggest volume client. So what that tells me is Black millennials got serious and they took the message to heart and said, "Fine, I'm coming to get mine." And we're pushing again for Latino families, get back up in there in the 40-somethings like you've always been, right? We're pushing for Asian families who went from 2% to 14% in our business. So 94% ethnic minorities in who we're reaching and touching. We're grateful for that. During the recovery, the big work now is making sure people don't lose whatever they've got, don't get evicted, don't lose their business, right?
Yeah.
And so we created the Center for Economic Recovery, and we joined coalitions like the one Joe is running for the CDFI Consortia. For those who are CDFIs, a lot of us are, who serve South Los Angeles, proud of it, always have. So I want to just encourage that we're a collaborator. And Candy, when you wrote me, I wrote right back. Then I got busy with something. You
Right.
touched me, I came right back, right? And so we need
Yes.
that with each other. And we need to be doing things like you're doing tonight. We applaud you for it. What Joe's doing, I don't know Lorna, but I'll get to know Lorna, right? And that we
Yes.
help each other. And so I'd say our work is still home ownership as a core. It's also small business, lots of TA support, pushing them toward the right resources. And then the last but not least thing is through the center, we have these collaborative spaces that aren't always talked about. So collective impact, where we bring everyone together that should be touching each other to make a neighborhood thrive. And we're great supporters of the Justice for Bruce's Beach movement. I was texting Kavan Ward while you were on with family saying, hey, they're shouting out your name. This is great. And she's going to help NHS and others with the Saving Venice movement. And Naomi Nightingale and her team, who, you know, Black families built Venice, California. People, that's a little known fact. They built
Yes.
chunks of Santa Monica with Inkwell, where the convention
Right.
center is. So we're into reclaiming Black land, reclaiming Latino spaces, reclaiming Asian land, reclaiming Native American land. That whole reparations piece, I don't even know what we're doing, but we're having a ball. And we are leaning into that. We're going to do Black LA, Brian Turner and Karen Slade over at KJLH. Those things matter. And I think what we can do to help is continue to be available, right? Accessible, running affordable business opportunity. And we announced the county's mortgage relief program 2 weeks ago. Over 2,500 families have already come to foreclosure workshops. So we're
Wow.
on the tip of an iceberg, y'all, right? And the county had a small amount. We're trying to get them to add a zero. That does not include the city of Los Angeles residents. So city of LA, get your poop together. It's time to get in here. LA residents need to get mortgage relief. Come on. And so we're
Absolutely.
pushing, Candy. So that's my story. We're grateful and so happy to be here and share in the love with our friends.
Wow, you all are amazing. I don't know if people know how powerful you are. And let me say this. You mentioned it, Lori. Yes, each one of you responded. And that's what we have to do. When someone calls, we have to say, how can I help? You know, what can I do? And one of the things that I thought was important was to have these conversations. And it doesn't matter if one person is here or 150,000 people are here, because all I need is one person that's getting this message to share. I would like you all of these resources, the ones that you've reached, discussed, Lorna, Joe, and Lori, please add them to the chat. Because one of the things that we're going to do, we share the chat. Once we take this video down and we look at the chat and we send it out with the video to everyone who has registered. And then we also are going to do a report and feedback to all of our sponsors and our community partners so they'll know what's going on. So please add your information to the chat. And for those of you who are participating, please add your questions to the Q&A. I'm going to go back over to you, Lorna, but I want to mention something here. The reports have shown that millions of women are being pushed out of the workforce, with working mothers amongst the most likely to bow out. And the U.S. Labor Department statistics report that 2.2 million fewer women were in the labor force in October of 2020. And you're dealing with some people that have been adversely affected in so many different ways, especially when we talk about foster youth, people who have been in the system, those people who have returned from the community. So I want you, Lorna, to share with us the impact of the wealth gap that many youth face in foster care, and what do you believe can make a positive shift?
So yes, thank you, Candy. I want to say, I believe I heard really quickly, I want to say Lori mentioned, I don't know if she's still there, that she didn't know me. But Lori, I'm going to tell you one thing I failed to say, that I have been in Los Angeles. I'm a proud person who has lived in Los Angeles for 3 years. So I'm still getting to know people. Although St. Anne's Family Services has been around for over 113 years, I've been here 3 years. So I look forward to getting to know you. What I will say is that you talk about what's happened with women leaving the workplace, and I'll go to the foster youth, but I'll talk with you about them as well as some of the other women. You know, the challenges faced is people were trying to do homeschool, they were trying to work online, they were trying to do so many things in an impossible environment. And so some people had to make the decision just based on all of the balls that they were trying to keep in the air. And I talk about that all the time. We're juggling, women are juggling. Sometimes we're juggling glass balls, sometimes we're juggling rubber balls, and we're trying to make sure those glass balls don't drop. So sometimes we have to let the rubber ball go. And so for that, for some people that was working. But back to your question about, you know, young people in foster care, you know, they're already, you mentioned it a little while ago, they're already coming into systems dealing with trauma. You know, people say, oh, trauma, I don't have trauma. You know, I haven't dealt with trauma. The fact that they had to leave their family of origin starts with a trauma. You know, whether those family members or the family that they were with were doing things the way that we would agree with or not, it doesn't matter. They love that parent and they love that family member. So there's trauma created. And so they have that emotional baggage that they're dealing with and, you know, having to work through. And one of the reasons that I really love this work is that we have the blessing of being able to positively change the trajectory of their lives. So when you're talking about this gap, we have to make sure what we've been doing is providing stable and safe housing, affordable housing, all those things I listed as what brings people into the system. What we do is we try to make sure that the foster youth get what they need, you know, providing quality education, elementary and secondary. I have a problem when people act like it's an option that maybe someone should have in terms of a youth that's in foster care to have a college education. If they want that, that should be offered, that should be paid for, and that should be something that they have an option for, as well as job training and workforce development. That's something that we do. And I am a big proponent of making sure that we do an assessment in terms of what that young person is interested in, what they have the skills to do, because I don't think it's fair that they are always pushed to the side and relegated to having some type of position that may not fit them, may not give them the level of respect that they deserve to have choices in life. One of the things that's challenging for many of the youth is the fact that they don't have options for choices, and that people see giving them things as something like, well, this is what you deserve. That is not the stance that I take, and that is not what I believe. But back to, you know, looking at, you know, addressing their understanding that taking care of your physical, mental, and behavioral health is key. We have to teach young people how to be great health advocates and adults. And if they have a child, that they need to learn how to be a great advocate for their children.
Yes. Well, you know, so many of our young people that are having children, unfortunately, did not have a good representation of how to parent. And so that is where we, the community, come in and wrap our arms around them. And I'm so thankful for the work that you do and the loving way that you do it. And I'm gonna shout out another person, Janet Kelly, who's in the audience, who works with these young people. And there's so many other agencies. I just happened to see her name. I know she's here. I'm not saying that anyone's better than anyone else, but the services are so necessary and needed. And Lorna, you said something so real, that people just want to give you what they think you should have. We do not teach children the way they need. We teach to a book, or we teach to a test, and not everyone learns that way. Some people are visual, some are audio, some want to touch, some need that one-on-one, some need the group experience, and we really have to do a better job educating our children in the way that they need to learn, the way that is best for them. And then stop just saying, relegating them to a certain thing. Well, you look like you should have this, or you should have that. And oftentimes it's mess. They give them mess. It's like when,
and it leads to them not being successful in that particular job or field. And then we hear things like, oh, well, that person doesn't want to work.
Right. Well, or they're lazy. When very often people, especially young people, are pushed into something that they have no idea about. We don't do the type of training and give them the tools and the skills that they need to be successful. And then they say, see, I already knew they were going to be a failure. Well, they were already a failure because you failed to prepare, you failed to provide, you failed to educate. So look, we could talk about that for the next 15 days or more.
And I'll end because I know you have to go on to the rest of the panels, but I will say this, I will go back to having a jump start with the education piece for the children from baby, from having the children. And we work with young people, but we also work with adults that are parents in our permanent supportive housing. And having that jump start by going into a education program for the babies and the children that gives them the social, emotional, and academic jump start that sets them on the path for educational success is a part of wealth. Because what happens when children fall behind, when they get out of fourth grade and they're not reading on level and they're not able to meet those academic markers,
Right.
they fall behind, and it's harder for them to gain the education to get the jobs that they want and to get what they need. So having that early education affordable is a part of improving the wealth gap, and just monitoring and talking to young people about the impact on your financial earnings of being involved with the juvenile justice system, how we need to really talk to young people about helping them with consequences and choices and decision-making in life during circumstances. And sometimes there are things that they didn't control, but how we can help them maneuver to be able to get back on track. I think those are all the things that foster youth, young people who are involved in foster care, we need to work towards.
I agree. Not just foster care, but all youth, because we talk about at risk. Every child is at risk. All they have to do is go down the wrong street, get in the wrong car, or just any kind of thing can happen to them.
Yeah.
Joe, what do you recommend for someone who wants to start their own business? And I'm going to add in a question on that. Especially if it's a young person, if they want to start their own business, because I think we're starting to see a lot more, especially on Facebook and Instagram, with kids starting businesses, and that excites me.
Well, that's a perfect segue because Saturday, May 1st, Vermont Slauson will be hosting, along with the Brotherhood Crusade, Union Bank, and Nefty, our annual youth pitch competition. It's our youth entrepreneurial challenge. We do it every year. Last year, we were obviously unable to do it. It is virtual this year. These kids get prizes, cash prizes, $5,000, $2,500 to $1,000. And you would be amazed at the brilliant ideas and entrepreneurial spirit that these kids have. To answer your question, Candy, mentorship. Find somebody who you can attach to. And that goes for all of our panelists. I mean, I had mentors. I think everybody on this panel has mentors. Our audience, we all had somebody, at least somebody. I had 3 in my life that I really looked up to, and I took good counsel and guidance. Well, most of the time I took good counsel and guidance. The times I didn't, I paid for it.
Yeah.
But that would be the first thing I would say is identify and ask somebody. If you don't know who a mentor is in the field you want to pursue, find resources that can guide you to those folks.
Yes.
And the other thing is you're going to have to eliminate the obstacles. I'll just be honest with you. You got to be committed. And certain folks in your life, you're just going to have to distance yourself from if you really want to start your business, because people will tear you down out of jealousy.
Yes.
And so you've got to recognize this is what I want to do. I'm going to change my thinking. And when I change my thinking, I might have to change my associations. And that's real. So I think those are the 2 of the main things. I also want to take an opportunity, because I know we're running real short on time, Candy.
But we got time. We got time.
Okay. So, I would just say be bold. I know Lori Gay, and I know how she fights. I know how
she's a beast.
And I know how Sharice Bremont fights at Brotherhood. I know what Mike Lawson's doing at Urban League. We all you got to put the advocacy hat on. Yeah. It's not just about running your program. It's being able to stand up against whomever, the electeds included.
So true.
Because we have to set the path that we want for our community. and then
Yes.
work with our electeds to execute our dreams and what we want for our community. So that being said, we pushed the banks hard. 4 years ago, we had one bank working with Vermont Slauson. We have 25 now. When I say work, I'm talking about the investing into our programs for our youth and for our kids. Netflix, when Netflix announced they wanted to help Black-owned businesses, when we reached out and finally were able to get to them, they were given $500,000. Well, I should back up. They were going to fund a local bank, which they called a South LA area bank, to help distribute funds to Black-owned businesses. We cut that short, and we were able to cut a deal to get $500,000 from Netflix to help 58 Black-owned businesses in South LA during COVID.
Yes.
So again, be bold. Co-America funded us to start our, to really build up our CDFI program. And just 3 weeks ago, we got the largest grant in the history of Vermont Slauson by just pushing people to the wall. And that was Wells Fargo, $750,000 to help build out and distribute funds for small businesses in South LA. So, you just got to be bold.
You got to be bold, Joe. You got to be bold. I love it. And you know what? Thank you so much for that, because I think a lot of people don't know how to stand up and ask for what they want. And I'm so thankful for my mom, who taught me closed mouth don't get fed. And I don't have a problem asking for what I want. And what I want is not just for me. It's for my family. It's for the people that are on my team. And I don't call them employees. I call them people on my team, because we're all in this work together. It's for my sister and brother agencies that I collaborate with, because when we get funds, we turn around and we will reach out to another nonprofit organization or even for-profit organization or individual, and we'll hire them for different things. So it's important that we show up and represent for everyone. And I thank all of you for doing just that. And congratulations, Joe, on all those grants, that collaboration with those other organizations. And I'm really excited about the student competition. So I hope everyone heard that. Joe, is there some information that they need to know and how to get their kids involved in that?
Yeah, so obviously this year is a bit late, but if you go on our website, all the information for the pitch competitions on our website. I posted it in the chat. For those, it's www.vsedc.org, Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation.org. Tons of information, and all of our coursework, all of our workshops are no cost to the participant. Materials, coursework, all the consultants we pay for, in large part by those bank grants that we've been able to get. So take advantage of it. I don't want to hear any more about this. We the best kept secret around. We're going to fix that too. So, that's what I'll leave you with. If you need anything, I will also put my email address in the chat as well.
Thank you. And I'm going to lift everybody up and say, be bold. Like when we started talking about this, we reached out to all of our partners, and I'm honored to say that both Neighborhood Housing Services and Vermont Slauson Economic Development Department Corporation are part of our sponsors. They helped us, and we decided we wanted to be bold and put this platform here and invite each one of you. So everyone who's listening, if you have an organization or a program or a service and you want us to know it, let us know. Reach out to us and say that you want to be part of this this work. We want to share what you do. So I'm going to go on because our time is running down. We have just about maybe about another 10 minutes. So Lori, what does legacy look like to the community? I think you already talked about legacy a little bit. So I'm going to add in, what does legacy look like for the community? Is it different for other ethnic groups? And why are you always chasing the truck in terms of equity, wealth, and opportunities?
Yeah, we like to talk that way around here, right? Because we're focused on people building their wealth for their families and future generations. Yeah. And I think homeownership's one of the ways to do that. And if you do it affordably, it's even better. but there are all kinds of ways to encourage people. You got the stock market, you got all kinds of other investments, right? But what we watched was how Black families led the loss scenario. They were the leaders in loss, along with Latino families in the last great big crisis. And so we don't want to see that again. We created something called a homeowner vulnerability index, along with UCLA, that got published last month. And Blacks were 47% vulnerable to lose their homes in Los Angeles County, leading of every ethnic group. We got to change that. And so as we talk to people, the stories are heart-wrenching. It's never good, right, when you're dealing with foreclosure prevention work. But now we add business on top of that. Joe's statistic he cited earlier, you got 40% of Black businesses in California that may not make it back. So it's not all about Black. This BIPOC conversation is about all communities of color. And that, in fact, while Blacks may have some of the worst numbers, once you add Latino, AAPI, and then Native American communities, it's just a dismal picture. So I believe we can change it. We do have to remember power never concedes without a demand, right? It never has and it never will. And that's what
Right.
Joe was talking about. And so we have to join together, put our feet down with the power moguls and say, you know, it's enough already. You've lied to me for 25, 30 years, 40 years. I'm not interested in it anymore. And I think that that's the kind of messaging to corporate America. Someone said to me yesterday, the number is 440 some million that's been given to Black businesses as a part of, you know, statements after George Floyd was killed. I said, well, where is it? The neighborhood haven't changed. I don't see 500,000 more Black businesses in America. So what happened? You
Right.
know, our local city council, are we with the money that got switched over from the police budget? While it's important to keep peace in our community, is that the only piece we're going to do? Peace, we're PIECE with that
Right.
money? Or do we need to press in and say, okay, peace ambassadors is nice, but so is a down payment assistance fund. Peace ambassadors
Yes.
is nice, but so is a small business entrepreneurship fund. So is a
Yes.
mortgage relief fund. So is a neighborhood properties acquisition fund. Do not allow the lawmakers to do only the nice thing, right? And we have to say that too. That's on us. I don't blame them. Now, all of us have to talk to each other. And so I think that's the legacy component. It's people and property. And it's saying to each other, we need more, right? And we've really got to figure out ways to support each other and then speak truth to the power, speak truth to each other. And in some of our communities, looking good is more important. And so we've got to shut that down a bit and be willing to say, what's the sacrifice and the work I need to do to be able to be at my best and to be able to leave legacy for my children. And I think if you look at it, how many of our rental property owners of color have suffered this past year while their tenants could not or did not pay rent, and they
While they,
cannot be evicted? But when
right.
those rules change, what will be the plight of the property owner? And so I
Yeah.
just think we've got to have these conversations. They're not easy ones. And our young people are watching. That's my last thought. They're watching. They're watching, seeing how we're spending. They're watching, seeing how we treat each other during pandemic. They're watching, seeing how we're lifting them up to inspire their best. We've made a real effort here to always hire young people, always have interns and fellows on staff. Learn the business of real estate, learn the business of finance, learn the business of lending money and not being a person who's a debtor and owes everyone. And I want that life-changing information from my little space to get out there to young people. You're not going to be the next Michael Jordan every time. And that's
No.
okay. The one per million that can do it, great job. But the rest of us, let's get in here, right?
Let's
And
get in
figure out
here.
that we can thrive and liven things up a bit. So we're excited.
Absolutely.
We're here to support. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Well, you know what? It just amazes me how our time always go by so quickly. We had almost an hour to have this conversation, and we still haven't hit all the questions that you all gave me. And we do have one question here. So we have about 5 minutes left for this last question, and I'm going to ask each one of you to take maybe a minute, minute and a half to answer this question and give your final thoughts. So Janet Kelly, well, first let me just say Vanessa Punch says, thank you, Lori and Joe. You and your teams and offices have been very supportive to my business. And then also Janet Kelly says, and thank you, Vanessa. Some low and moderate income residents feel that home ownership or business ownership is unattainable in our city, in our cost burdened city. What should the audience know about, let me just pull up the last part, affordability of homes and businesses. And also, so let's do that for Lori and for Lorna. And then Joe, there's a question for you, and I'll ask that in a second. So some low and moderate income residents feel that home ownership and business ownership is unattainable in our cost burdened cities. What should the audience know about attaining of home loans or businesses?
So I'd say certainly as a quick answer, you want to go to class, get all the information, find out what your options are. In our case, you can go on our website at any time, nhslacounty.org. We're offering 6 to 8 classes a week right now in English and Spanish and Korean. And we're trying to make sure that families are offered all the resources. And you want to know that you have options, right? We're offering down payment assistance programs that go up as high as $150,000. Now, everybody won't need that, but my goodness, right? And how do we bring in those resources and keep them sustainable? And so people who know glow, they get in there. They grab up the resources, and sometimes some of us miss it because we don't know what's happening. So I'd say get educated, invest in yourself, spend some time figuring out if it's the right opportunity for you. Same thing with the business ownership side. And then try your best to include real estate in your portfolio and balance sheet for your family. Because in our sector of society, out here in the West, real estate appreciates. Even if it does a downturn, it comes back. And so we try to encourage that so that people have a piece of something and they tell their landlord goodbye. Business or home, it doesn't matter. Own what you dwell in because home matters. Thank you.
Awesome. So Joe, question for you. How do small businesses take advantage of the grant money received to further help their business? And that's from Vanessa Punch.
Become a registered client of Vermont's Lawson. I mean, simple as that. On board with us. It's very simple. Go to our website. You can onboard your business right there. It takes about 5-6 minutes to do so. Those grant recipients that I spoke about, for Netflix and Southern California Gas Company, all these grants. And let me just say, as a CDFI last year, and I want everybody to hear this, we didn't fund one loan last year. And you know why? Because the last thing we wanted to do is put more debt on these businesses right now. So we went after grants. And so we called on these corporations and banks to step up their game. And that's how we were able to generate $1 million to help in totality to help those small businesses. But going back to the question, on board your business, you'll be eligible for everything, including whatever grants come our way, to be considered for one of those grants. And but take advantage of the instruction. We have the A-list of consultants in any area, whether it's social media marketing, business plan development, finance, QuickBooks, taxation, all free to you. So please help us spread that word.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Lorna, there's not a final question from you, but I'd like you to go ahead and give us your final thoughts. You have about a minute.
I would say thank you, Candy. Thank you. I love what you all have shared here. I'll just say there's a mindset shift that has to continue to happen. And I think our younger folks are already on it. And when we talk about money, we've always been trained, and it seems like cultured, especially, folks in my era and beyond, that we don't talk about money and our income and business, and we keep things secret. We need to get the education. We go to a doctor to deal with our health. We go everywhere where we need and get info. We need to do that if we want to learn a strategy to gain wealth. Some people can be an entrepreneur and make tons of money, but at some point we're not going to be able to work. So I want us to figure out as a community how to be bold, as Joe said, ask questions, but gain information the way Lori mentioned, so that we can become as smart as we need to be in learning how to make investments, knowing how to make our money work for us, knowing when to walk away, knowing how to do what we need to do. And I think that's a shift in culture because nobody wants to talk about money. I'll tell you this quickly and I'll end. A young person told me the other day they were talking to a financial planner, and the financial planner said that when it comes to other cultures, they will send over their paycheck, their document, their information like nothing. They have to talk with Black people to convince them. I am trying to help you with your money and your financial planning. I need your information, or I need your support to help guide you. We have not everyone, I don't want to blanket everyone, a relationship with money and sharing information about our wealth that we have to learn to kind of feel more comfortable that there are places out there who want to help us, and like Lori and Joseph who want our success. And so we have to be mindful and wise, but we have to shift our culture in terms of mentally thinking that we can't talk about money in a way that is helpful, because there are people out there who will do that, and we'll keep doing what we do. But I think we have to, as a culture, shift.
I agree. Thank you so very much, Lorna Little, Joseph Ruzan, Lori Gay, for joining us today. This conversation has been very impactful and just full of resources, and I am honored and thrilled to work with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Candy.
You're welcome. Thank you. And so as we come to the end of our conversation, I really want to say thank you again for all of you for being here and all of our guests. There's a couple of things that I do want to lift up. Yes, every one of us should have a mentor. Find someone that can work with you, that can teach you. And it doesn't have to be someone who is older than you. It could be someone who's younger than you that could teach you so many things. But for those of us who have been in the business for a while, and we have skills and we have gifts and we have knowledge, share that. Don't take that to your grave. Share it with your team, share it with your family, share it with a young person, share it with your next door neighbor so someone will know. For those of you who are thinking about starting a business and somebody is whispering in your ear, don't do that, dumb mess. Let me tell you something. The reason that people tell you don't do it is not only because in some cases they're hating, but some of them, they're not able to understand what you're talking about because the Spirit did not give them the gift that they gave you. If you have a gift, if you have a vision, if you have an idea, you better go ahead and walk boldly into that idea and that vision and stand up and be bold about it and go ahead and do it. The only thing that could stop you from being successful is you. And let me give you the definition of failure. Failure is not taking any action. If you take action and you start something and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you were a failure. That meant that didn't work. Keep on trying again. For the young people, take a chance on yourself. For the parents, go ahead and support your children. And on that, our time is running out. I want to say thank you again, and thank you to our sponsors, Southern California Gas Company, Los Angeles Business Journal, Kaiser Permanente, LA Care, Vermont Slauson Economic Development Corporation, Neighborhood Housing Services, Forgiving for Living, Sweet Life, Supervisor Hilda Solis, and I think I hit everyone. And if I didn't, I apologize. Our time is out. I thank you. I thank my team. I thank you all for being here. And please see us in 2 weeks where we will be talking about safety, and that is community safety. So thank you. I'm Candy Lewis, Executive Director of Positive Results Center, and I'm out. Have a don't want to leave. This conversation has been so rich and so delicious. And I thank you so much for that. But guess what? We over. So put your last thoughts in the chat and go ahead and exit and come back in 2 weeks, okay? And thank you again to our AFL. Yay! I hope y'all love this conversation. I love you. I do. I love you. Thank you.